Good evening and welcome to Between the Lanes, episode number 155. I'm Ron.
I'm Shane.
And yes, it's been a while since we did the last show, about 4 or 5 weeks, I think. So
I'll go with 3.
I'm going to go with 4. I'm going to actually go with 5. Now that I think
I
about
don't think it's been that long.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think the last one.
We did a show before Thanksgiving, so yeah, maybe so.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it was the last before Halloween, actually. Yeah. So anyway, we're back, and episode 155. You can find us on YouTube. Slot Racer is the channel. 155 episodes, some special episodes, and some how-to videos over there. Find us on Facebook. Between the Lanes is the page. And we have lots of race results. So in no particular order, some of these series have had 2 races since the last show, and some have only had 1, and, well, we're just going to go for it. So start with the Penn, Ohio series. They were at Washington Slot Car Club back in November. And I don't have a podium of the top 3, but the winner there of Can-Am was Ricky Bernardo Jr. Greg Mayer was second. Steve Pluznik was third. No pick of the F1 podium. Ricky Bernardo was the winner again. Mike Muir was second. Jim Verga was third. And then in the stock car class, Ricky Bernardo Jr. pulled off the sweep by winning that class. Dan Ebert second. Mike Muir was third. Penn, Ohio was at HMS in Bellevue, Ohio last weekend. And Can-Am winner was Jason Dennis. Cap Henry second. Jeremy Wyatt third. F1, Jeremy Wyatt was the winner. Doc Doherty second. Mike Muir in third. And then in Stockers, Cap Henry was the winner. Greg Mayer second. Jason Dennis third. The Flexi Flats race was held the first weekend in November at Washington Slot Car Club, Washington, Pennsylvania. In DTM, Justin Colvin was the winner. Chris Radish was second. Dave Shadow Smirko was third. And then in LMP, it was almost identical podium, except for Justin Colvin was your winner. Chris Radish was second. Greg Mayer was third. And Justin was the grand champion of that event by winning both races. Mid-South was at Mach 1 Raceway in Virginia. On the 4-inch stock car class, James Merriman was the winner. Bobby Beecham was second. Russ Martin was third. And then in the scale NASCAR class, Bobby was the winner. Shane Parent second. Russ Martin third. And in the, that's the GTP class, Ralph Thorne was your winner. Shane was second. Bobby was third. And in LMP, Ralph was the winner again with Russ in second and Shane in third. And we'll come back to that in a little bit. Central Illinois Slot Series was at Route 66 back in November. In the hard body race, Jeff Strauss was the winner. Jason Plummer was second. Randy Lynn was third. No picture of the Can-Am podium, but Ron Hirschman was your winner. Jeff Strauss was second. Alex Junkos was third. In the dirt late model race, Ron Hirschman was the winner. Toby Kindig second. And Randy Lynn third. And then GTP on the High Bank Oval had Ron Hirschman winning. Toby Kindig second again. And Ken Williams in third. Mark's Model World was the site of the Thanksgiving Throwdown Retro Race, Thanksgiving weekend. Can-Am, the winner was Willie Custer. Jason Dennis was second. Ron Hirschman was third. In F1, Willie Custer was the winner again. Dave Smirko was second. Ron Hirschman third. And Willie Custer was the overall champion of the Thanksgiving Throwdown. The Ohio Oval Series, they've had 2 races. So last month they were at Fast Alley in Fremont, Ohio. Stock car class was won by Denny Murray. John Nolstein was second. Derek Lang was third. In the IndyCar class, Derek Lang was your winner. Denny Murray was second. John Humberger was third. And then in dirt late model, I didn't have a picture of that. Dennis Murray was your winner. John Humberger was second, and Tom Booz was third. Last weekend, the Ohio Oval Series ran at HMS, and the stock car class, this is actually the IndyCar class. Mike Lear was your winner, Denny Murray second, John Humberger third. And then in the 4-inch stock car class, it was Mike Lear the winner, Denny Murray second, John Nolstein third. And then in dirt late model, it was Mike Lear pulling off the sweep of all three events. Denny Murray was second. Tom Booz was third. Gator Retro Racing Region was at P1 Raceway last month. Stock car was won by Jeff Bonanno. Marcus Ramos was second. Ralph Josie was third. In the coupe class, it was Jeff Bonanno again, Terry Tawney second, and Ralph Josie in third. And then in Can-Am, Marcus Ramos was your winner, Terry Tawney second, and Don Bonanno was third. Ohio Challenge Cup was at HMS. Yeah, that was November too. Weekend before Thanksgiving, as a matter of fact. GT1 Pro, Ron Hirschman's your winner. Al Rudy in second. Jeff Hennis was in third. In the LMP Group 10 class, Eric Shirey was the winner. Jeremy Wyatt was second. Jeff Hennis was third. In the GTP class, Ron Hirschman was the winner. Eric Shirey second. Jeff Hennis third again. And I don't have a picture. I didn't take a picture apparently, but GT1 Amateur, Jeffrey Hennis was your winner. Ellen DeCoster was second, and David Mitchell was third. Then, this is part of the no pictures part of the show, so we're going to go there because I didn't have all the pictures. But the Nazareth Nats was held mid-November down at P.A. Watson's Slot Car Raceway LLC. Two-motor open. Andy Wasserman was your winner. Big Willie was second. Gary Pitts was third. One-motor box. J.T. Tefelos was your winner. Milton Gamble was second, and David Etheridge was third. C12, Shelby Thomas was the winner. Mike Matero second. Gary Pitts in third. Group F, Bob Barone was the winner. Randy Otwater was second. David Etheridge third. Hillbilly Box, Archie King was the winner. Shelby Thomas second. Jason Cooper in third. And in Group 7, Shelby Thomas was the winner. P.A. Watson second. Archie King in third. The Fall Brawl was also in mid-November. GTC, Ryan Bruce was your winner. Dale Granger second. Steve Levinsky was third. GTC Pro, Danny Zona was the winner. Andrew Ford second. Duran Trujillo was third. Stock car, Danny Zona won that race. It was Keith Libby in second. Jimmy Williams third. F1 was won by Edsel. Dale Yamashita was second. Danny Zona was third. Can-Am Plus was won by Matt Bruce. Dale Yamashita second. John Gorski in third. And then in Can-Am, which, side note, I'll get to that in a second. Jimmy Williams was the winner. Matt Bruce was second. Keith Libby was third. And Danny Zona was the overall Fall Brawl champion of the event. So back to the Can-Am race. So like Matt Bruce had some problems qualifying and didn't get a lap time. So he went in, I don't know if I shouldn't say he didn't get a time. He might have got a really slow time, but he had some kind of mechanical problem qualifying, and that put him in the lowest main. So, he had to finish in the top two to move up to the next main and the next main and the next main. So
He did some racing.
he did some. I mean, like if he'd have won the Can-Am A main, he could have honestly said, "I beat everybody in this building today," because he raced against everybody. He raced against everybody. He ran from the bottom all the way up to second. So hats off to you, Matt. That's a hell of a job. I mean,
Yeah, be in the Z and work your way up to the A.
yeah, that's a long way to go. So yeah, that's a hell of a job. So that's Shane's cue as usual.
Sunday.
So we are in December. The weekend of the 12th, we have Mid-South at the Slot Car Track, Concord, North Carolina. Shane will be there. We have the Ohio Challenge Cup at Fast Tracks, Fremont, Ohio. The weekend of the 19th. The only two events I have is Gator Retro Racing at Raceway Biz in Melbourne, Florida. East Coast Flexi Series is RJ's Speedrome, which did you see today that RJ's got a new hill climb track that they're in the middle of refurbing? Did you see that, Shane?
Who was it?
RJ's Speed Zone. Apparently
if I
didn't.
did, I don't remember.
I don't think you've seen it.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I did, I honestly don't remember.
So then of course we have Christmas week, and I'll give you some dates for January, but with COVID now starting to postpone events, cancel events, states are changing their regulations. So here's what we got for January 2021. The Ohio Oval Series is at, I forget the name of the raceway now, but it's Carl Hoffhein's raceway that was in New Baltimore, Ohio, has moved to Toledo and it has a new name. And the Ohio Oval Series is there on the 3rd of January. On the 9th of January, we got Retro East at Speed Zone. Mid-South is at American Adrenaline in Randleman, North Carolina. Ohio Challenge Cup is scheduled for Tom Thumb in Columbus, Ohio. The weekend of the 16th, we got East Coast Flexi Series at Speed Zone, New Jersey. They're supposed to run all the classes on the World's Track. Central Illinois Slot Series will be at Bloomington, Illinois. That's Mid-America Bloomington. The HMS Retro Benefit Race will be at HMS in Bellevue, Ohio. The 23rd, we've got BRS at Real Speed Raceway, Fort Wayne, Indiana. And we also have the Washington Slot Car Club first ISRA race of a 3-race series that they're starting, and they're going to be running, let me find that note. They will be running 3 races, January 23rd, February 20th, March 27th. They'll run ISRA Production, GT12, and JRL classes. This is for the flat track guys in Ohio and Pennsylvania and other close by areas to come and race and get tuned in for the USRA Nats in April and the Israel Worlds, both events to take place at Speed Zone, New Jersey this year. And then the weekend of the 30th, got Penn, Ohio at Tom Thumb Columbus, Retro East at Port Jeff, and the North Carolina Flat Track Series will probably be at, tell us, Shane. Monroe, North Carolina.
What's the name of the track? I don't even know the name.
Is it the race center?
Yeah, I think.
You think? That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, sounds good.
But I don't know.
We'll go with it.
Okay.
I honestly don't know because I haven't been there yet. I haven't really been paying attention because
right. Yeah, I think
it hasn't really been coming, you know.
Yeah, I think it's called the race center. So.
The old 1-2 Facebook, and I will give you.
That's okay.
I'm not prepared.
You're not prepared. You didn't take your notes.
No, well, you know, pre-show.
Because that's
why we're doing this. So.
Yeah, that's a series of what, 6 races through the year, flat track races. They were supposed to be at Concord, and the Concord location is closing or moving, and so I guess they're transferring over to
the race center.
That's the race
name
center.
of
Yeah,
the race center in Monroe.
So they've got the old Bristolville flat track that was up in. Oh boy, I can't remember the name of the town it was in Ohio, but
it was in one of the posts that I had it until you said something.
Yeah, so anyway, they sold that track. Maybe it was Bristolville, Ohio. Anyway, so they sold the track to Debbie at in Akron, Ohio, Route 66 Raceway, and she never got it set up, and she closed, and it was sat in storage for a while. And I guess Randy went up there and purchased the track from her, and now that track will be at the race center.
The oval that he got with that flat track, he has set up at his Concord location now.
Oh, you're correct. Yes, you would be correct. Yes.
Be racing on that this weekend.
Okay. So on a sad note, in the last couple of weeks, we've lost Lost to three kind of important slot racers to death. The first one we're going to talk about is Rick Sloane. Rick is in the picture on the right. Rick was a Midwest racer since, the 70s. He may have raced in the 60s, I don't know for sure, but he's raced wing cars, scale cars for many, many years in the Midwest. He was from Battle Creek, Michigan. Recently, you could find him at Boogie's in Jackson, Michigan, and he lost his battle with cancer a couple weeks ago. And I don't know. I mean, like, I never really raced with Rick much. I mean, I think the last time I raced with him was at the USRA Nats in 20. Well, no, I raced a retro race with him a few years back at Boogie's. But prior to that, he ran at the USRA Nats in 2011. And in the Group 10 class, he was second. Terry Watson won, and I was third, a few sections behind him. And good time, good race. Super likable guy, and he will be greatly missed. And we also lost John Ford, which that isn't a very big picture of John. But John Ford, I've got some props here. So back in 1979, he started Scale Auto Racing News. And this is like the first volume, issue number 3. I don't know, there's probably maybe 12 pages of this magazine, but over time, John.
Black and white, or is it color?
It's black and white newsprint. And then over time, John, he improved the magazine and used nice slick color paper and new logo, different logo. But John kept slot car racing, going information wise, for a long, from 79 to 93. I mean, that's where you got your news from. I mean, John Ford's Scale Racing News was it. There was no other magazines, and kind of another one of our dark age periods there in the late 70s to the, I guess, mid 80s, when more and more raceways were opening up and stuff. And I mean, he was a part of that. I mean, John owned raceways in Texas over the years. John started American Tracks and built tracks in the early 90s, mid 90s. And, John did he used to do how-to books that he sold. He had a series of books, how to build chassis, how to build motors. He may have been one of the first to publish a raceway list of raceways in the United States. He did videos. He was the first guy to do slot racing videos. He might go to a Nats and, videotape lots of stuff, edit it, and sell a copy. I want to say he probably did some how-to type videos too. So, John was always looking to move the hobby more forward. And he was heavily involved, and he was a good guy, and he will be sadly missed. So in the last few months, there's been talk of David Etheridge bringing back Scale Auto Racing News, more of a digital type version. So we'll see what happens there. But and at the end of Scale Auto Racing News, John was doing the magazine digital versus print. So
right, yeah, I remember he was doing that with the CDs or DVDs or whatnot.
Yep. So, I got one of those, and for some reason it just never worked for me. So I never got any more after that. But at some time he decided to just kind of retire from that, and he was, like I said, I mean, his competition from 93 until I must say 2003 was Paul Mayer's Slot Car Bulletin. There was room for both of them, and but John was the last to publish a slot racing magazine geared toward commercial raceways and stuff, and racers like us, So So then last week we lost the legend, John the Jet, the man from Mira, John Sucras. Anybody that's been around slot racing for any amount of time has heard of John Sucras. He was one of the jet set racers of the 60s. This picture is from 1967. At that time, he was sponsored by Champion. It's an old picture when they're driving with a thumb controller. So
I thought it was the one where he's got like glasses on and a cigarette. I was going to tell you, is that the one that you named me after?
Yeah, well, we're getting there. So, John was one of the top racers in the 60s, right up there with the Stoobies and Howie and Sandy. And, they were the early pros, the early sponsored racers that traveled around and raced and represented companies that they were sponsored by. So then in 1968, there was the big San Antonio Hemisphere race. It was a Texas car model race held in San Antonio during the World's Hemisphere. And, San Antonio Showdown was kind of one of the billings of it and stuff. And there's a picture of Sucras with Bob Cozine. I'll get that story in a minute, but Bob and John were teammates when John was at Champion. So here's a picture with, John racing with his cigarette dangling from his mouth, and he didn't have his sunglasses on, but he now has a pistol grip controller. And there's a story about that too that's tied in with the San Antonio race. So in 1968, there was a USRA race at a raceway in California. I believe it was the first USRA race. And back in the day, the magazines, Car Model, Model Car Science, Champion had the ARCO rules. So there was like these different rule sets. They were pretty similar. But USRA was not created to start a national series. They were a replacement for the Car Model rules because in 68, Car Model decided that they weren't going to sponsor races, and they were going to sponsor less races, but they weren't going to publish their own rules. They would just adopt and use USRA rules going forward. So in 1968, first USRA race in January. After the race, John Sucras goes to the bathroom. He's in there washing his hands. This is the story as John told me. So I don't want to hear any comments that, this is what John told me. So John's in there washing his hands, and in walks Ron Mira and Bob Lenz, which Lenz was tied in with Mira. He had his own motor company, but yet he was tied in with Mira. They come in, lock the door, and Ron Mira says, "I want you to come race for us." And at the time, John was racing for Champion. And John was I don't know if he had a degree or not, but he went to school, and he was like a motor engineer. Okay, so like he studied DC motors and stuff. And at the time, John was working on designing a new motor for Champion. I don't know that Champion may have been aware of it or not, but John was working on, because back then everybody was buying Mabuchi motors and then rewinding them and selling them as like, blueprinted pro race motors. But the Japanese parts had a lot of problems. And then there was shortage of motors, like, Mabuchi just said, one time they just couldn't produce enough motors to supply all the companies in the United States. So, there were shortages. So Mira wanted not only John to come race for them, but maybe they knew that John was working on something, but they wanted John to come there and race for them. And then John's like, you know what? I've been working on this new motor design, and it would be all made in America. So, come see us next week. John goes up to San Francisco, sits down, talks to Ron Mira. Okay, we're going to hire you. You're going to race for us. And the rest is history. So, they start developing this American-made motor. So, it was the first time that, well, I guess maybe it wasn't the first time, because, there was Pitman motors and there was other motors that weren't really used in pro racing. That was American-made. General Electric made some motors, and Pitman made motors, and, yeah, they were made in America, but they were big, heavy motors, and, they were going to make an American-made 16D sized motor, and that's what they did. So, they were the first to come out with American-made armature blank with 7,000 laminations. Like the Mabuchi stuff was either 14 or 20,000 laminations, and they didn't high saw coat the armatures. They had a lot to be desired, and they had, small Chinese or Japanese-made commutator that they blew up quite easily. And Sucras had discovered that, Kirkwood had this. Well, I think Champion actually discovered the fact that Kirkwood had the 3-pole commutator, and they were selling it as a separate sell item. I don't know that Champion was winding arms with that blow-proof Kirkwood commutator, but they were offering it for sale to armature rewinders. So, Sucras knows about the com. I guess he designed the lamination. Tooling was bought. They tooled a can. They tooled the end bell. They tooled everything in the United States. So this race comes up in San Antonio, and that's kind of where this new motor debuted. And Sucras more or less blew him away with this race with this motor. So that put Mira on the map big time. And then after that, Champion kind of played catch up over the next few years, because they eventually came out with an American-made lamination blank and used the Kirkwood com and coated the armatures and did all that stuff. So, the other interesting thing about the picture I have up is John's got a pistol grip controller, which was a Ruskit controller, because Ruskit made the first pistol grip controller for slot racing. And at that time, because Ken McDowell always said that John Sucras put me on the map with the Ruskit controller. And at the time, Ruskit was selling controllers, but Ken McDowell, Parma Raceway, was buying parts from Ruskit, and they were building like hot rodded controllers, like better resistors, heavier wires on them. It wasn't just a standard, like ready to run controller. Like basically it was a Parma economy controller. I don't know if you've ever had one of those, but that's a beginner's controller, and you could never race, like an open type motor with those things.
I think whenever I started, the controller that I had, it was a Parma controller, but it was the pink resistor 2-ohm.
Yeah. Single barrel. And these were single barrels.
No, it was double stacked.
So you had a turbo.
Yep.
Okay. Well, the turbos weren't out yet. So
gotcha.
Anyway, so Ken always said that Sucras winning that race with that controller put him like on the map as far as controllers and resistors and stuff went. Because part of that, Ken was just doing this stuff and kind of selling it locally in his raceway, maybe doing a little mail order. But once this happened and Ken advertised it, the controller business really took off for him. And then a year or so later, Ruskit files bankruptcy. Ken winds up with the Ruskit tooling to continue to make the controllers up until a year or so ago. And then Ruskit also had a smaller controller that was made for HO racing. So Sucras was always the background of the famous slot car racing story, Sucras, the Sound of Teenage Money. So you can find this article online, and Leo Mandel, who was an automotive journalist, he wrote for Auto Week and probably a lot of Car and Driver and other magazines and through the 60s. And I think he passed away in the 90s, maybe, or the early 2000s. So Leo Mandel's really well known as far as a journalist in the automotive world. But he went to a race at Elmsford Raceway, wrote this article. It's kind of sarcastic. It's like he knows real racing versus these guys racing these toy cars, and talks about how when Sucras walked down the stairs, the sea of pimples parted for him, which meant all the young kids, were like, "Ooh, it's Sucras." And
Right.
so, he kind of covers a little bit about the Elmsford race, and he talks about the other pro racers at the time being there, like Jerry Brady and Pete Von Ahrens, and it's almost like a story about wrestling, pro wrestling, if you will. So, and then the following week they went to a race out at Nutley in New Jersey, and Leon followed him out there and wrote some stuff about that race. It's not like a race report, but it's an outsider's look at this star of slot racing and the other stars around him, and the fact that Sucras, the story was in 1968, 69, Sucras was making $50,000 a year racing for Mira. So I don't know if that's true or not. I never really asked John about that, but John kind of had a piece of Mira at one time, because he designed the motor, and there was lots of John Sucras armatures, John Sucras edition motors, the flower power stickers and stuff like that. That was all Sucras, and custom painted cans of, they had some really cool stuff for its time. And, then there was the B can that was developed in that time, which was a complete failure as far as slot car motors go. And that's another story for another day. So, Mira got put on the map. They were the big motor company for a while. The B can almost took them out of business, or almost put them out of business. By the end of '69, George Mira, who was Ron Mira's dad, came in, kind of took the company over, cleaned the place up, hired Bob Green. They came out with the C-can motor, and the rest is history. So there you go. So I met John in 1993 at the USRA Nats in Reseda, California. So I think we've talked, on one of the shows in the past, how I won that race in 24th Eurosport, but that's back when you had to make tech at the end of the race on both clearance and width. And when we changed my tires, I thought it came off, and I put another spacer on, and at the end of the race, I had one extra spacer on there. So I was over width, and I lost 10% of my lap totals, which put me down to 5th or 6th. So the backstory is I was working at Parma at the time, and in 1992, I was at the Performance Industry Racing Show. Parma used to display there, and Felipe de L'Espinay was there, PDL. And that's when I met PDL. And I told him, the Nats are coming up next September, because this show was in, I think either late 92, like November, December, or maybe it was January, February of 93. Anyway, I told Felipe, we're having the USRA Nats. You should come to the race, and I will build cars for you to race. And I think you could probably run Flexi cars and Eurosport cars, because they're similar to what you raced back in the early 70s. So Felipe was in. So then a couple months before the Nats, Bob Lincoln, who owned Wizard HO, called me up and said he was going to the race and wanted to know if I would build him stuff to run in the box stock class. I said, sure, I'll build you a box stock car and some motors. So then he told me, Sucras is going to be there. And I said, well, ask John if he would like to race, because if he wants to race, I will build him a Eurosport car, and he can, he can come race. Okay, I'll talk to him about it. So over the next month or two, it's like, yeah, John wants to race. John said he will race. So, I go to the race. I've got, I don't know, 4 or 5 Eurosport cars. I had one car I kind of built for John. I painted the body blue and white. And I was planning on running yellow and white cars. And John gets there, and, we meet and we talk and heard some stories from the past and, how's Ken doing, blah, 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 stuff like that. So, so I give John his car, and he goes out and practices and stuff. And, he didn't get around too bad. I mean, he had been racing HO cars for a long time. So, he was one of the early pioneers, developers of the magnet cars like the G Plus, the Super G Plus cars. And, I mean, John was involved with AFX, Aurora, Rocar. He had his own companies, Race Masters, or he was involved in Race Masters with Jim Russell. He was involved with Rocar. I think he might have even been involved with Lifelike, but he was, HO was his thing, R&D consultant. So John got better with the car, and, he knew Joel Montague, Cayman, from back in the day. And Joel was trying to get him to run the wing car race, like, run the Group 7 race. And John, I remember John making laps with it and stuff, but I don't know. Anyway, one thing led to another, and next thing you know, John comes over and says, "Thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to decline on the offer to run in the Eurosport race." And he handed me the car back. I was a little bummed, but okay, whatever, his decision. I was cool with it. So, I'm out there, and I'm testing, and I put that car on, and I'm like, wow, this car's really good. Like, so I wound up racing the car that I built for John. Like I said, I won the race with it, but at the same time, I got disqualified. I didn't get disqualified. I lost 63 laps or something because I was too white at the end. So the car was really good. So at some point, I asked John, would you happen to have an old chassis that you built from the 60s? I wouldn't mind having it for my collection and stuff. He says, yeah, I'll see what I can do. So we posed for this picture that I have up, and he says, yeah. He says, if I find something, I'll send it to you. So a couple weeks later, in the mail comes a chassis from John. It's a 24th scale angle winder car. It's like, wow, this is really cool. He built it. He didn't really, say where he raced it or if he won a race with it or not. Anyway, so I put in my stuff, and it was probably, wow, 8 or so years after that. I dug the car out one day, and Phil, a guy that worked for me at the time, he had brought in a bunch of old magazines from the 60s. I said, hey, go through those magazines and see if you can find, like, what era this car came from, because I would like to restore it someday, and I want to know what motor was used in it, maybe what body and stuff like that, because I just had a chassis, right? So, I don't know, hour or two later, Phil's like, here's the car. And I'm like, really? Well, the chassis was used. John called that chassis Old Reliable, and John had raced it at Columbus, Ohio at one of the Mira races there, and he won with it. And after the race, he had sent it to the magazine, and with a story behind it and how he built it, how it was constructed, and they made like this illustrated drawing. I couldn't find a copy of it. I had to put it up here, and it's like this. It's the car, because like the lead had been taken off of it, but you could see where the lead was stuck on it. And in the drawing, it showed where the lead was placed and everything. So it's like, this is the chassis. So, I kind of kept it and cherished it. And then at some point, I decided it'd be better off out at the Slot Car Museum in LA. So that's where the car is. I don't know that it's ever been restored or anything, but it's in the hands of Scott Bader at the LA Slot Car Museum. So I can only hope that if he hasn't restored it, someday it will be restored. But I never did anything to it. It still had all the original patina and discoloration and stuff like that. So So yeah, so that car resides there. So that's, and then over the last few years, I usually talk to John once or twice a year, and we shared stories, and he had some pretty good stories from the past. But I'll hang on to those until the long overdue History of Slot Racing book comes out by PDL to see what. Because there's a big mystery about, and I don't know if you've ever heard this story, but Jerry Brady was one of the hot pros. A lot of the guys that were in early, when Jerry came in and started beating them, they didn't like him, which that always happens in slot racing. And they were at a raceway, I think it was Elmsford, and I think Jerry Brady was the fastest qualifier. And anyway, when he went to go get his car out of impound for the main, his motor was locked up, and it's one of slot racing's greatest mysteries. And who super glued Jerry Brady's motor? Okay, so Jerry gets his car, it's all locked up, of course freaks out, so they give him an hour to take the motor apart and get the motor running again. So one time I was talking to John, I said, John, so who super glued Brady's motor? And he goes, I know who did it. He says, and I'm not going to say, but he says, but it was my super glue. So apparently somebody must have said, you got a bottle of super glue? Yeah, I got some super glue.
Right.
After the motor was found to be super glued, locked solid, he knew that it was super glue because he said, I got a full bottle of it and there was only a quarter of the bottle left. So he goes, I know it was my super glue. So anyway, so we'll see if that story is revealed in this long-awaited book. But PDL claims to know who did it too, so we'll see.
It's funny.
We shall see. So, John had been active for the last several years in the Southern California Retro Racing Association. He'd had a bout with cancer a few years back, and sadly he died of a heart attack. I guess it was right before Thanksgiving at home. So, gonna miss you, Jet. So, and there's a final picture of John here a couple years ago, taken at Buena Park Raceway, kind of the home of SCRA. But yep, John was a legend. So that's all I got.
Yeah, a little bit of everything, a little bit of history.
Yep. Yeah, John was the guy I wanted to kind of.
And future.
I talked about interviewing, and he I'm not going to say he declined, but he just he's like, I'm not feeling it. So.
Right.
Because I just wanted to ask him a bunch of questions about his time at Mira. Because after Mira, he got into HO racing, and a lot of people probably don't know this, but Model Car Racing Journal, which was like a newsprint type slot racing newspaper. It was more of a newspaper than a magazine. Him and Mike Morrissey was behind that. I don't know whose brainchild it was, but Mike Morrissey was kind of the front man, and I think John was kind of partners with him. And but I think Morrissey did most of the work and stuff. But John was behind it too. So John got out of slots, kind of went RC racing for a little while, and then got into designing and developing and making stuff for HO companies or working for them and stuff. And it's pretty much what he had done since the early 70s, was mainly HO kind of stuff.
Right.
So, yep. So he will be missed. So other than that, so I said earlier when we were doing race results, so you went to Mach 1 last month, and I think that's the first time they've had a big race, and you said you had a lot of fun, and the place was nice, and how'd it go?
Oh, it went good. I mean, non slot car related. I thought it was cool. I didn't find this out until the end when we were getting ready to start packing up and leaving. But apparently, where we stayed at the hotel, 5 minutes from there, there was the house where I guess the Civil War was ended.
Oh, okay.
Signed the paperwork. I was like, had I known that,
And is that not called a Protomix or a Proximix or something?
Yeah, kind of like me with the town in Ohio. 1 week it's Franklin, next week it's Franklinton, next week it's Franklinton. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're in Virginia where the surrender was.
Yeah, so I thought that was kind of cool. And yeah.
So an interesting tidbit when you brought that up. So my family, I never researched this, but Robert E. Lee.
Coming from you, would it be research or would it be fact checking?
This would be both.
Okay.
I just know what my grandparents and my mom always said, that she always said, well, Robert E. Lee is your fifth great grandfather.
Gotcha.
So I do not know that for sure. Never really give it much thought, and I've never done a family tree or anything like that to see. But on my mother's side, because my great grandfather was a Lee, and so I never. And then my grandma was a daughter of him.
Well, it's kind of funny you say that because my dad's middle name was Lee.
Well, see, my middle name's Lee, but I don't think I was named after Robert E. Lee. Okay, so funny story. So my mom always said that if I had, so my name is Ronald Lee, and my mom always said that if I had been a girl, my name would have been Rhonda Lisa. That's what she had picked out. It was either Ronald Lee or Rhonda Lisa. And then my brother was Robert Lynn. He would have been Roberta Lynn if he'd been a girl. So
we cover slot cars, we cover family trees, we cover Civil Wars. What do you want to talk about it? We cover it between the lanes.
There you go.
We may not cover it every weekend, but guaranteed when we do cover it, we cover it all.
And speaking of girls, I did get beat by a girl a couple of weeks ago out here at the local track. I haven't taken much ribbing over that, but somebody said, "Oh, you got."
Somebody
said you got beat by a girl, and I said, "Well, I don't think I've ever been beaten by a girl in slot racing."
Right.
In the same race, okay, like at the 95 Nats. Somebody threw me a 27 car to race, and I didn't want to race, but I raced. Sherry ran in that race. She might have won. I don't remember. But, I never –
She has the Nats win,
yeah, she does. Yeah, she has a couple, I believe. But the thing is, I never raced in a race with her, okay?
Right.
We never were in the same race at the same time. We might have been in the same overall class, and she finished ahead of me, but – and then I know that I raced in a box stock race with Connie Alosi, and I finished ahead of her in that race. I mean, we were in the same race. Right. But like most men, we haven't raced against many girls in slot car racing. You know what I'm saying? So
I can honestly say I've been beat by a girl too. I'll let you tell your story, then I'll tell mine.
Well, I mean, I went out there and had two cars, and I'm going to race this car, and she runs out there every week. She gets around the track really good, and somebody says, I heard her say, I'm not racing. And I said, why aren't you racing? She's like, well, my truck's not very good. And I said, well, go over and grab that truck and race it. She's like, no, that's okay. I said, go over and grab that truck and race that truck. Okay. So then she tells me, well, I'm going to qualify into the B main. I said, no. I said, you run the wheels off that sumbitch when you're qualifying. So I TQ'd, and she was second fastest. I was about a tenth faster than her. And we started the race, and she started down on black, and I think I started on yellow. And, on an oval, of course, there was a tenth difference between the lanes going up the track. So towards the end of the second heat, I noticed my motor was slowing down, so I went over and changed it. But I just, you know what, I didn't drive very good, and yeah, she beat me. Like I said, no excuses. And I thought, well, I'll get back when I get underneath her.
Right.
And you know, I'm going to red and she's coming to white, and I'm 20 laps down. I'm like, nope, I ain't beating her. Unless she has problems. And
Right.
well, then I started changing the chip in my controller, and I mean, I did win the last 2 heats of the race, but you know, I just didn't have my act together. I didn't have my act together. And then,
right.
you know, after the race was over, you know, somebody said, "Would you let her win that race?" I'm like, "No, I didn't let her win that race." I said, "It's okay, she won that race. She had my backup car. I mean, that's cool. I mean, my cars went 1-2 tonight and set a bunch of track records and stuff. So I was cool with that. I mean, like, you know, if you're gonna get beat, you might as well get beat by your own stuff. So I was cool with it. So
my story about getting beat by a girl was Mid-South Series. You know Mike Lowry, his wife Faith, she would race.
Okay.
And everyone would look at her and be like, "Oh, Faith's racing." Like, if you've ever met Faith, she's kind of quiet, unless she knows. Like, she cuts up with me because I've known her for years.
Right.
Usually she's kind of quiet, keeps to herself. You know what I mean? And to think, oh, she's racing, oh, whatever. But no, like, she was tough. And then, you know, Mike's no slouch as it is. So
right, he's a national champion.
Yeah, so we were at a race. Mike built her a GTP car, and she was out there. And I was like, "You going to race?" And Mike's like, "Yeah, I'm not going to race. I'm going to let her run GTP." All right, cool. No problem. And she won the race, but I remember it was funny because we were on a small track. So it was one of those, if you didn't time it right, you were going to take someone out, and it was just a hard track to pass on. And I remember she took me out and, like, stopped in the middle of the race and was like pat me on the shoulder. I'm sorry. I'm like, keep going.
Right.
Don't stop.
Right.
You know, I was like, or I'm going to hit you again, you know? Yeah. She not only beat me, but she nerfed me in that race. But yeah.
So.
But yeah, she was tough. I mean, if she had a car and she was racing,
right,
she was a contender, and you wouldn't think it, but yeah, she was a racer.
Well, I think that girls, females, women, whatever you know, I think they can be very good racers.
Well, drag racing.
Yeah,
I'm sure you've heard the name Marty, his wife Jenna.
Right.
She's always either the second place, or I know it would be interesting to see how much money they've won in the last year drag racing. I think she just won one, or he may have just won one, and it was like $600 to win.
Right. Well, I know the one guy from Ohio, and I seen his name the other day, and I'm thinking, you know, just a few short years ago, supposedly he won like $20,000 in 1 year just bracket racing.
Right. Well, one guy that used to race round-arounds with us, you know, he went to drag racing because they were really that good. Not talking bad about the guy, just speaking the truth, but as a drag racer, he's killing it.
Right.
And it's like, well, he found his liking. You know what I mean?
Well, that is, I mean, every now and then I'll say to myself, you know what, you should be drag racing because you can make some money at this probably, or maybe, you know what I'm saying? But you have a chance at it. You have a chance at making money at it. Yeah. So, yeah, like I always say, when I get to the point where I can't run around the track and pit my car in 2 minutes or whatever, and I still want to race, I guess I'll go drag racing.
Right.
So, not there yet, but who knows? We'll see. That could be a year away. That could be 5 years away. Who knows?
Right.
Who knows? Because I've drag raced a few times.
Right. Closest thing I've come to drag racing is whenever Randy first got the full wide drag strip set up at the Concord location.
Right.
And track was on or whatever. I know me and Walker, we were kind of playing, and it's kind of how Walker kind of reeled me into playing with HO cars on the HO track.
Right.
He had a car and a controller, and he's like, "Run this thing, it's fun." And Randy's like, "Go run." Walker had a couple of drag cars, and the controllers were hooked up. he was like, well, this car's faster than that car. So far as a drag race, you should beat me. And I was like, well, all right, let's go on reaction time. So you can turn the best reaction time.
Yeah, it's cutting the line.
Yeah. So, funny story is I'm right-handed.
Yes.
But as everyone knows by now, I race slot cars round-and-round track with my left hand.
Southpaw.
Right? So I drag raced with my left hand just because that's what I'm used to.
Okay.
And when I told Walker, I was like, let me try my right hand drag racing. Yeah, I turn a quicker light with my right hand. So it's like if I ever drag race, I'm going to do it right-handed.
Right. Well, see, that was the thing about the pistol grip slot car controls. The finger is faster than the thumb.
Right.
And you don't really realize that until if you went to a track and you ran your car and then you flipped the controller like Al Rudy style and drove with your thumb.
Right.
There's no fluid. There's like no fluid finesse with your thumb. It's either on or off. Like with your finger, you can kind of finesse if you need. You know what I'm saying? Like.
Right.
So yeah, the finger. Because when I worked at Parma, they had in the Parma Museum there was I don't know how to describe it. It was a metal box, and it had a thumb controller and a pistol grip controller with the wires going inside the box. There was some kind of timer, and like you would say, okay, do the thumb, and record your time, and then do the finger. And the finger was always faster than the thumb. So, and I don't think the thing was rigged because it used the same timer for both, but.
Right.
So. The finger is faster than the thumb. Because I remember, when in the early 90s and prior to that, when we went to the Van Rossum Worlds in Chicago in 88 and 89, most all the foreign drivers from Europe all used thumb controllers, or a big chunk of them, especially the guys from the UK.
Right.
Some of the Italians were using thumbs. Some of them were using pistol grips. So, yeah, and I think, Al Rudy's the only guy I know of that I race with regularly that drives with his thumb. Well, Bud Bartos does too, sometimes.
I never, yeah.
And they're like the only two thumb controllers that I kind of actively race with. And as I always say about Al, that was thumb kind of race, So there you have it. So
never did any kind of thumb racing.
I think one time we were somewhere and we were having a for fun race, and everyone had to drive with their thumb. Flip the controller up and drive with your thumb, and it was interesting. But it was just kind of a fun race. So.
Right.
But I have. That's been a long, long time. It's, probably been since the 90s. I did go and cut laps, driving with my thumb, just testing or practicing.
Oh yeah. There's been times out there playing around in practice. I switch over and race with my right hand just to see, or we'll be chatting or whatever, and someone will notice, oh, you do it with your left hand. How are you with your right hand? I'm like, I don't know. You want to try it and see? They'll stand over there and turn marshals. They're like, I can't believe you're right-handed race with your left hand. I'm like, it works.
I remember one time I burnt my hand really bad with a soldering iron. I was trying to get a pin in off a motor or something, and it slipped, and the heater part of the iron went up in the web of my hand between my thumb and index finger. And yeah, I couldn't use my right hand for a while, and I tried driving my left hand, and it did not cooperate very well.
Just a little time off.
Yeah, excuse me, probably a week or two, because I burnt my hand really bad. Because I was holding the motor, and I had my left hand, and when it slipped, my left hand arm didn't have the reaction like my right arm would have had, or hand. You know what I'm saying? To pull it away.
Right.
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad.
Like me, when I'm changing pinions on motors, you can just look at my fingertips and you can count the teeth.
There you go. Yep. All right, so that is it for episode number 155. I think we'll probably do another show between now and Christmas. I've had people say, well, I miss the show every week. And then I've had other people like, I kind of like the show every other week or every couple weeks or a longer period because I can stay caught up better with the show. So,
right. Yeah, and it's kind of a surprise. You never know when we're going to pop in.
Right. And we've both been super busy. And, I mean, a lot of it's on me because I'm the guy who has to prep for the shows.
Too, it's like we discussed before with COVID. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's really, at one time, it was just us just chatting. It's just like,
right.
Who wants to just hear us talk?
Right.
Just talk. Yeah.
And, I've got a list of things I want to, how-to videos and stuff, but I just haven't had the time to do them. So,
right.
So we'll see. But, yeah, we're going to keep going, and we're not going away. And I think we'll have another show, maybe two before
I personally
Christmas.
like the every other week, every 3 weeks, because it gives us more to talk about.
Okay.
And then with me racing,
right.
It's like we discussed before, full-time job, doing the show and prepping for racing.
Yep.
So that's my opinion.
Okay. So
I'm letting you do it. I'm beating you to it because I have no idea.
Well, we're going to go with John the Jet.
All right. I was going to go with Jet, but then I didn't want any confusion with P.A. Watson Jet tires. So
Yep, John the Jet.
I like it.
That's the magic word. And until next time, episode number 156 will be next. I'm Ron.
Sorry. Like it may be before Christmas. It may be after Christmas.
Right. So I'm Ron. He's Shane. And we're out.